Discover the incredible journey of Detroit diesel, the heartwarming engine saved after 30 years. Rain pelted the roof of Frank's shop, its rhythm a haunting lullaby matching the storm brewing in his heart. He wiped his brow, the grease smudging his hands and this weary day mingling with clouds of uncertainty. The auto repair shop inherited from his father, a titan in engine building, felt more like a ghost town than a sanctuary of proud craftsmanship. It was a far cry from the bustling center of the community it once was. People passing by barely looked his way, blinded by the lure of new technology and hesitant to trust the old ways. As Frank dug through the dusty corners of his garage, he stumbled upon a relic from the city's glory days. A Detroit diesel engine. He picked it up, brushing off years of grime. Instantly, a wave of nostalgia crashed over him. A tidal surge of laughter and pride echoed in his mind, the sound of his father sharing stories while working late into the night. Memories flickered through him like a projector, illuminating times spent in the shop, where every engine was more than just metal. It represented sweat, dreams, and resilience. He could almost hear his father's voice. These engines are heart and soul. They keep our blood pumping through this city. Frank's heart raced. This engine could be more than scrap. It was a beacon of possibility in a world that had turned its back on tradition. But as excitement sparked, clouds of doubt rolled in. He overheard the whispers as he walked through town. Why bother with the past? They say, the future is electric. Frank clenched his jaw. Would he really allow these thoughts to drown out the legacy of his family? No. He wouldn't let the whispers of obsolescence snuff out that enduring flame. Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. With newfound determination, he set out to restore the Detroit diesel engine, a task daunting yet necessary. Each bolt he turned felt like a battle against the tide of change threatening to wash away everything he held dear. Despite his growing ambition, self-doubt crept in as he noticed his neighbor's skepticism, their gazes lingering just a moment too long, a mix of disbelief and pity. Then came the local festival, the perfect stage to celebrate the past and unveil the revived engine. But as storm clouds gathered outside, so too did his fears. Would anyone care? Would they show up to support him? The wind rustled outside, howling like the doubts clawing inside him. He had to rally his neighbors, those who had forgotten the beauty of their history amidst modern distractions. Yet, with the storm pounding hard against the shop, an urgent question loomed over him. Could he stand tall, rekindle the spirit of the community, and convince them to embrace their legacy before it slipped away for good? The winds raged, the storm roared outside, but deep down, he couldn't shake the hope that flickered in the depths of his heart. Would the essence of the Detroit diesel engine help to revitalize not just his shop, but the very soul of his city? The sun peeked through the clouds the next morning, casting a tentative light over Frank's shop. As he stepped outside, he felt the damp air cling to his skin like a reminder of the storm still brewing in his mind. Though the sky was clearing, his doubts loomed larger than ever. The local festival was just a week away, and he needed to gather support, but how? The townsfolk had grown comfortable with their new gadgets and sleek models, forgetting the warm, rumbling spirit of engines like his Detroit diesel. With resolve, Frank began cleaning up the shop. Dust danced in the shafts of sunlight pouring through the windows, and for a moment, he lost himself in the memories of laughter and hard work. He could almost see his father's silhouette, hammering away at their latest project, a smile stretching across his face as he shared his wisdom with Frank. Never forget how we got here, his father would say. These engines, they tell stories. Each one is a heartbeat of this city. Frank placed the engine on a makeshift platform he had cobbled together out of old crates. It gleamed in the morning light, a testament to what could be, if he could just convince others to see it too. He took a step back and examined his work, The engine was still a work in progress, but its potential radiated with pride. Later that day, Frank decided to take a walk into town. Each step felt heavier, but he pressed on, determined. As he approached the local cafe, familiar faces greeted him. The warm aroma of coffee and cinnamon filled the air, and despite the unease he felt, he walked inside. "Hey, Frank," a voice called. It was Doug, a mechanic from the next street over. "Still working on those old gas guzzlers? You really should switch to something modern, man." The laughter among the group was light, but it stung. Frank forced a smile. "Actually, I'm bringing something back to life. A Detroit diesel engine," he said, trying to inject enthusiasm into his words. A few eyebrows raised, but the chuckles didn't subside. "Why do you waste your time with that, man? We need to adapt." Another friend chimed in, shaking his head. Frank's heart dropped, but he refused to show weakness. These engines were built to last. They were a part of our community. We might just need to revisit our roots. He felt the weight of their disinterest, but there was also an invitation in their laughter, a challenge he couldn't ignore. It ignited a fire within him. The next day, he scoured the town for old photos, scrapbooks, anything that could symbolize their shared history. He posted them on his shop window, hoping to draw attention and curiosity. He knew it would take more than an engine. He needed to reignite the community's pride. That evening, he stayed late in the shop, polishing the engine until it shone. As he worked, he imagined the festival, a vivid scene of lights, laughter, and familiar faces coming together to celebrate. He closed his eyes, envisioning the crowd gathered, leaning in as he told the tale of the Detroit diesel. And then, it hit him, a plan, an idea that could draw people in and give them a reason to care. He raced home, excitement bubbling in his chest. What if, instead of just displaying the engine, he created an event? A demonstration to showcase what the old beast could still do, gathering history and community together, allowing everyone to witness the revival of something they each had a piece of. But as he lay in bed that night, his heart racing with anticipation, another thought gnawed at him. What if no one showed up? Would they all just laugh it off like Doug had? Could he truly inspire them to see value in remembered history? He drifted into dreams filled with roaring engines and laughter, the hope of connection wavering against doubt. Would he have the courage to pull this off, or was he just chasing shadows? The following morning would be a turning point, but the question hung heavy in the air. Could one engine bring a community back together before it was too late? The next morning burst forth with energy, a vivid contrast to the tangled thoughts that occupied Frank's mind. He awoke early, the sunlight streaming in through the window like an enthusiastic crowd waiting for the show to start. Today was the day he would bring his vision to life. He blinked away sleep, feeling the weight of his decision settling on him. He had to make flyers, reach out to friends, and, most importantly, give the people a reason to care. Time was against him, and tension twisted in his stomach. Still, he pushed through, his heartbeat matching the quickened pace of his thoughts. By mid-morning, the small stack of flyers was ready, a mix of bold colors and nostalgic images of the town's rich history. He stepped outside, clutching them tightly, as if they were a lifeline. Each footfall towards the town square felt like a promise. Another inch closer to igniting something long thought extinguished. As he walked, he spotted a group of locals gathered outside the hardware store, chatting and sipping coffee. Frank hesitated for a moment, catching Doug's laughter slicing through the air. But the flicker of fear was quickly replaced by determination. He approached the group, clearing his throat to gather their attention. "Hey, everyone," he called, forcing an inviting tone into his voice. "I got some exciting news." The chatter hushed as he held up a flyer, heart racing. "Next Friday at the festival, I'm showcasing a Detroit diesel engine. It's not just any engine. It's part of what made this town thrive. I'd love for you to come see it, and even participate." The crowd exchanged glances, eyebrows raised with cautious intrigue mixed with the usual skepticism. Doug smirked, crossing his arms. "What's the point? It's just a chunk of metal." Frank couldn't let the venom of his doubt seep in. "It's more than metal," he replied. passion igniting his voice. It represents our history, our craftsmanship, and our unity. I'm planning a demonstration to show what it can do. Think of it as a memory revival. I need you there to witness it. Together we can remember who we are. Silence engulfed the group, anticipation crackling like static in the air. Frank caught the glimmer of interest in a few eyes, and for the first time, the laughter felt distant. It was a long shot. Could they actually care? What's your plan? A woman asked, her brow furrowing in curiosity. I want a live demonstration, Frank explained, and even some contests, like who can guess the horsepower just by hearing the engine roar. It'll be fun. And we can celebrate all the hard work that built our town. A few nodding heads started to break the initial tension. The murmurs swelled with potential, and Frank felt hope tickle at his heart. Could this really work? But doubt slowly crept back like an unwanted guest. What if it turned into another joke, another disappointed crowd? Frank's hands trembled slightly, gripping the flyer tighter as if it were his only shield. All right, I'm in, Doug finally said, lifting his coffee cup in an awkward toast. But if this thing breaks down and embarrasses us, you owe me a drink. Laughter erupted, lightening the air. Frank smiled, feeling a weight lifted, even if just a bit. He had stepped forward. He had taken a chance as he left the group. New energy coursing through him. Frank wondered if he could truly rally the town around the engine. What if they saw it not just as an old machine, but as a heart beating for their past? The day rolled on with Frank feeling the swell of possibility, but he was reminded yet again of the looming doubt. The festival was just around the corner. Could his efforts stand tall against the facade of progress? The clock was ticking and he could feel it. What if, against all odds, the truth of their history could be revived on that day? Would this engine finally breathe life into their connections once more? The days slipped by in a blur of preparation and hope. Frank woke each morning to the sound of birds chirping, a promise of life buzzing in the air. But even as anticipation grew, shadows of doubt still lingered. The festival loomed closer, and every tick of the clock reminded him of the potential for failure. On Thursday evening, he found himself alone in his garage, the Detroit diesel engine sitting quietly before him. It was a hunk of metal, aged and reliable, a relic of the past that had survived the passage of time. He ran his hand over its surface, tracing the faded paint and rust, imagining the power it once unleashed. With a deep breath, he began to work, pulling out tools and cleaning supplies. Each scrape of metal against metal was a heartbeat, echoing the pulse of the town he loved. The engine needed to shine. He wanted it to roar, to remind everyone of their shared history. As dusk settled in, light poured through the small window like golden honey. He immersed himself in the task, losing track of time. In those moments, he envisioned the townsfolk gathering around, laughter shared, stories exchanged, and connections rekindled. It filled him with warmth, a flicker of hope against the nagging whispers of hesitation. But when he paused to wipe the sweat from his brow, a wave of uncertainty washed over him. What if they didn't come? The thought clawed at his chest. What if his dreams of a revived community shattered in front of him like glass? The next morning, he zipped up his jacket against the crisp air and ventured out. The town square buzzed with activity vendors setting up stalls, families arriving with blankets and baskets. As he approached, he felt a mix of excitement and nerves knotted in his stomach. People were milling about, but would they care about his engine? Would the festival bring them together or leave him isolated as a spectator? Frank spotted Doug chatting with a couple of friends near a food stall. He took a steadying breath and walked over, hoping for a friendly face. Doug caught his eye and beckoned him over. "Hey Frank, ready for the big day?" he asked, a grin on his face that felt genuine. "Yeah, just hoping it turns out well," Frank admitted. "I don't want it to feel like a flop." "Nah, man. Just show them what it's about. You've got this." Doug clapped him on the back, offering encouragement. "I'm bringing my family. They're curious. And I'll bet others will be too." Feeling buoyed by Doug's enthusiasm, Frank glanced around at the throng of people preparing for the festival. This wasn't just another event. It was a chance to reconnect, to remember. Could it be just the spark they needed? Later that day, he sent out one last round of messages to friends and family, urging them to stop by. He needed the support, the enthusiasm of familiar faces. As night fell and the stars peeked through the blanket of darkness, Frank lay awake contemplating what tomorrow would bring. He envisioned the engine kicking to life, the crowd filled with laughter and nostalgia. But as he closed his eyes, doubt crept back in. What would happen if he failed to engage them? What would it say about his understanding of the town? Tomorrow, everything would either come together or crumble apart. It was a moment teetering on the precipice of possibility. As Frank drifted into a restless slumber, one lingering thought echoed in his mind. Could a piece of machinery really unite a community again? The stage was set, and for better or worse, the curtain was about to rise. The sun peeked over the horizon, casting a soft glow on the town square. Frank jumped out of bed, his heart racing with a mix of excitement and anxiety. Today was the day. He could almost hear the cheers of the crowd, the hum of conversation, the sound of children laughing. He dressed quickly, each movement fueled by the anticipation thrumming in his veins. Outside, the brisk morning air filled his lungs, awakening every sense. The aroma of fresh pastries wafted from a nearby bakery, and he could hear the distant clanging of metal as vendors set up their stalls. As he made his way to the square, he noticed the banner fluttering in the wind. Welcome to the annual community festival. It felt monumental, a banner full of promise. Frank picked up his pace, the engine in the garage waiting like a sleeping giant, ready to roar to life. When he reached the square, the sight took his breath away. The once quiet space buzzed with energy. Children dashed around, families gathered under tents, and the smell of grilled food filled the air. It was the scene he had envisioned, but now it felt more vivid, more alive. Frank felt a wave of gratitude, watching his community come together. He moved towards the center of it all, where his engine sat proudly, polished and gleaming under the sun. It was more than just metal. It was history, a vessel of shared stories and collective memories. As he approached, a knot of familiar faces began to form. It was then that he realized he wasn't alone. This was his family, his community. "Hey Frank," called out Doug, waving as he walked over with his two kids in tow. "Look at this beauty." He gestured toward the engine with an excitement that made Frank's chest swell with hope. "Thanks, Doug. I really wanted it to stand out," Frank replied, allowing a smile to break through his earlier nerves. The crowd began to gather around the engine. Laughter and chatter replaced the silence that often filled the garage. Faces lit up with curiosity, and children stared wide-eyed at the structure. Frank felt his heart race. This was what he wanted. "Is this really what our town built years ago?" one woman asked, her voice filled with nostalgia. "Yes. This engine powered many trucks that shaped our town," Frank explained, his confidence growing. He started sharing stories of how it had served the community, each tale pulling more people in. Suddenly, a loud whistle pierced the air, followed by the roar and clatter of the engine starting. Frank's heart soared. The sound drew even more people, curious to see what the noise was about. He grinned as he watched faces turn, eyes light up, and hear whispers of recognition. This was at a moment he had yearned for, a spark of connection igniting in the heart of his community. Frank felt the weight of his worries melt away, replaced by a warmth that mirrored the sunlight above. But just as he began to feel secure, a sense of vulnerability washed over him. What if this wasn't enough? What if the crowd needed something more? Then, he remembered the doubts he had wrestled with only last night. Could a piece of metal really unite them? The crowd's energy swirled around him, filled with laughter and wonder. But would that bond last? As the festivities continued, Frank scanned the crowd, searching for familiar faces: his sister, his best friend, even the town mayor. They were all here. But just when he thought the day couldn't get any better, a voice pierced through the chatter. "What exactly are we celebrating today, Frank?" It was a stranger, standing at the edge of the group, arms crossed, wearing an expression of skepticism. Frank's heart sank momentarily. Doubt, that old friend, crept back in. He opened his mouth, feeling the weight of the question lingering in the air. This was more than just an engine. This was symbolic of a new beginning for the town. What could he say to really capture that? The crowd shifted. The air was electric with anticipation. Would this be the moment that defined everything? Frank stood at the edge of the crowd, the stranger-esque question echoing in his mind. All eyes were on him, waiting for his response. His stomach churned as he grappled with the thought of what this engine truly represented. He took a breath, avoiding the urge to retreat into his shell. "We're celebrating our history," he began, his voice steady despite the whirlwind of emotions inside him. "This engine isn't just metal and machinery. It's our past. It's the stories shared in this very town, the late nights spent working on our cars, and the generations that have come together to build something beautiful. This festival is a celebration of all that we are." A few faces lit up with understanding. Nods and murmurs whispered through the crowd. Frank could see the wheels turning in their minds, and he pressed on. It represents hard work, perseverance, and community spirit. It reminds us that together, we can build something that lasts, something worth celebrating. As he spoke, Frank noticed his sister in the crowd, her eyes glistening with pride. The realization that he wasn't just speaking for himself, but for everyone around him, filled him with strength. The festival wasn't about the engine anymore. It was about everyone they had lost, everyone they had loved, and the unity they still had. The stranger nodded slowly, arms unfolding as if his heart was beginning to soften. "You're right," he said, voice less sharp. "I can see it now. What a way to bring everyone together." A ripple of applause broke through the crowd, growing louder as more villagers joined in. Frank felt a surge of hope, lifting him higher. It felt infectious. The doubt that had haunted him all morning began to dissipate under the weight of the shared connection blooming around him. In that moment, laughter bounced through the square as children twirled and danced in the sunlight. Families wrapped around their loved ones, and the smell of grilled food intermingled with the sound of joy. It was the beginning of a legacy woven into the heart of this community. After a few moments, Frank took a step back, overwhelmed by the emotion filling the scene. Just then, a group of kids dashed past him, laughing as they chased a bright red balloon. The sight brought a smile to his face, a reminder of simpler times and hope for the future. But just as he began to relax, the mayor stepped up onto the stage, microphone in hand, furrowing his brow. "Frank," he called out, "we need to discuss." Frank's heart raced again, uncertainty creeping back in. The mayor's expression was serious. What was coming next? He felt a knot form in his stomach as the laughter around him dimmed, replaced by whispers of curiosity and speculation. Was the festival about to take a wrong turn? "What do we need to discuss?" Frank asked, his hands nervously fidgeting at his sides, preparing for whatever was about to unfold. The crowd quieted, their focus shifting to him, their unwavering support still strong. Frank could feel the weight of their trust, their hopes, as they awaited the mayor's words. In that charged moment, he realized the heart of the festival wasn't just in celebrating. It was about what lay ahead. Would they embrace the future together, the same way they cherished their past? It was the point of no return. "Let us hear it," he responded, voice steady, but inside, his pulse quickened. The next words spoken could change everything. The mayor's gaze swept over the crowd, and Frank held his breath. "I want to talk about the future of our beloved festival," the mayor began, his voice steady. "With all the recent developments in town, there are talks about expanding tourism and upgrading our facilities. But there is a concern." A silence fell, heavy with expectation. Frank felt a bead of sweat trickle down his back. Was this about money, the community, or worse, the festival itself? The mayor took a deep breath. "Some believe that if we turn this festival into a larger commercial event, it'll draw in crowds. But others worry." Frank interjected before the mayor could finish. "Worry about what? Losing what makes this festival ours? The heart of it?" He couldn't help but raise his voice. "Are we really ready to trade our soul for a quick buck?" Murmurs of agreement rippled through the crowd. Frank's fear transformed into determination. The engine, once an emblem of their past, now embodied their fight for the future. The mayor nodded, acknowledging the passion. Exactly. But we must consider sustainability. The town wants a vision that includes everyone. So I propose a vote. We can keep parts of the festival intact while exploring new avenues, but we must decide how far we're willing to go. Voices began to rise, debates mingling with laughter and disputes. Families turned to one another, excitement mixing with apprehension. Let us hear what others think. A voice called from the crowd, drawing everyone's attention. National pride swelled with every beat of heartfelt conversation. Frank felt the energy lifting again. I stand by what Frank said, shouted an older man in the crowd. Our traditions matter. We've got to make sure that our history isn't just for a cheap ticket but for us who live here every day. Absolutely, Frank shouted back. The second wind of hope ignited in him. He realized he wasn't just an observer anymore, he was part of something real, something bigger. As other voices chimed in, their words woven like threads into a rich tapestry of community unity, Frank's heart swelled. Notes of nostalgia mingled with the promise of renewal, chipping away at the doubts that had once haunted him. He envisioned a future where the engine was not only a symbol of their past but a beacon for what was yet to come. Then, a young girl tugged on Frank's sleeve. It was his niece, the one who often joined him in tinkering with old cars. She looked up with wide eyes. "Uncle Frank, are we gonna still have the races?" Her innocent question pierced his protective shell, drawing forth a wave of tenderness. "Of course, kiddo. We're gonna make sure you can dream behind that wheel for many years to come." Frank turned back to the crowd, driven by that very promise. We can keep the heart of this festival beating as we look to the future. Let us not forget who we are. The crowd erupted into cheers, voices rising up like a chorus of hope. But amidst the celebration, the mayor raised his hand again, trying to calm the storm of enthusiasm. "I hear you all. I appreciate the passion. But we need to vote soon. We can't afford to divide our community over this. Let us settle on a plan that doesn't erase who we are." Frank felt the weight of that statement settle heavily in the air. As whispers sparked around him about the potential for change, he couldn't help but wonder, would they really come together? Or would the community he loved fracture over the very thing meant to unite them? "I need to think," he murmured, looking at his sister among the crowd, her eyes reflecting a hope that mingled with the fear of losing their way. As he stood there, caught between memories and the unknown, he couldn't shake the feeling that the biggest decision was yet to be made. What direction would they choose to steer their history forward? The clock ticked down, and the choice loomed ahead like an approaching storm. The air felt electric as voices merged in a cacophony of opinions. Frank's heart raced. Every cheer and chant echoed his own worries, and he knew this was more than just about them. It was about the countless stories woven into the fabric of their festival, stories tied to their families, to who they were. He looked around, searching for familiar faces among the crowd. There was Mr. Thompson, the elderly mechanic with grease-stained hands who had fixed nearly every car in town. Next to him, the Phillips family huddled together, their children bouncing on the balls of their feet. Each face mirrored the uncertainty that clung to the moment like an uninvited guest. Frank felt a hand on his shoulder. It was his sister, Jenna. "What do you think?" she asked softly. Her eyes were bright yet clouded with concern. "Are we really ready to consider their proposal?" "I don't know," he admitted, a wave of doubt crashing over him. "We need change, I get that, but I can't shake the feeling we might lose ourselves in it." Jenna nodded, squeezing his shoulder. "Remember why we're here. It's about keeping our community alive. About keeping our traditions," she whispered at in that moment. He recalled countless summers spent racing alongside the same cars that made up their festival. The sound of engines revving, the smell of burnt rubber wafting through the air, laughter echoing. It was their shared heartbeat. But change was coming, and Frank felt it like an undertow, pulling at him. The mayor's voice broke through the noise again. "Let us lay out some rules for this vote. I want everyone to express their thoughts here tonight. And remember, this is not just a choice for today. It's a legacy we pass on to our children." His words lingered, pregnant with meaning. Frank's eyes settled on his niece again. She spotted him and waved, a beam of innocent light in the gathering dusk. Would she ever understand the struggle that burdened her hometown? Suddenly, a thought struck him. He stood taller, pushing through the throng of bodies. Wait, can we open the floor to some stories? Let us hear why this festival matters to each of us. A stunned silence followed, and then murmurs of agreement rippled through the crowd. Frank's heart raced with excitement. If they could share their stories, maybe the community could see how intertwined their fates were. One by one, voices began to rise. An old woman shared her memories of her first dance at the festival, the nervous excitement that lingered. A teenager spoke about his father's role in the first race, how it had united their family. Another man recounted the magic of fireworks on hot summer nights, a spectacle that drew everyone together in a W. As their stories danced in the air, Frank felt something stir within. They weren't just talking about a festival. They were talking about love, dreams, and hope. With every word, the fears began to melt away. Silence fell momentarily, and then Frank's niece raised her small hand. Can I say something? The crowd leaned in closer, eyes glistening with curiosity. Yes, sweetheart. Come on up, Frank urged, feeling a swell of pride fill him. She climbed up next to him, her small frame juxtaposed against the sea of adults. Her voice rang out, clear and confident. I want to race my car someday like Uncle Frank. It's so much fun. Please don't change things too much. The crowd erupted into laughter and cheers, both at the simplicity of her plea and the depth of its truth. In that moment between innocent dreams and heartfelt memories, Frank felt a power rising that if society's relentless push for change meant they could lose all this, he had to fight with everything he had. He turned to the mayor. Let us do the vote, but let us make sure we add the stories to it. Let us build every chance of keeping our roots. The mayor nodded, eyes reflecting a new understanding. That can be our first line of defense against losing ourselves. As the crowd began to pulsate with energy again, Frank felt emboldened. If only they could merge the old with the new while keeping their essence intact. The consensus bubbled rapidly, and tension filled the air like burnt gasoline. Every heartbeat echoed the importance of the moment. But then, just as spirit and unity surged, a flash of doubt crossed Frank's mind. Would they truly find a balance? Or would this become the very fracture that brought them to their knees? And as he stood among friends and family, the realization washed over him. The real battle had just begun, and the outcome was anything but certain. The crowd buzzed, a palpable energy spiraling around Frank. He could feel it thrumming through his veins like an unyielding heartbeat. As more stories flowed, the atmosphere shifted, a quilt of shared experiences wrapping around every soul present. Voices rose and fell, creating a melody of nostalgia and hope. The mayor gestured for calm, the flickering lights casting shadows on his earnest face. All right, folks, let us take a moment to gather our thoughts before the vote. This is our legacy, but also our future. He paused, glancing toward Frank, sparking a silent unity between them. Frank took a deep breath, letting the warmth of camaraderie bolster his resolve. He wanted to keep this feeling alive. Jenna, he shouted over the murmurs, gesturing her to join him. She stepped up, standing beside him. Tell everyone what the festival means to you. With her heart in her eyes, Jenna started. Every year, this festival is like a family reunion. It's where we share meals, stories, and laughter. It's not just about the races or the rides. It's about us being together. Her voice rose, confident and true. The wave of agreement spread through the crowd, everyone nodding like pieces of a mighty engine finally clicking into place. Frank could feel that tug at his heart again, those memories of driving through alleys with Jenna as kids, laughing when they made up silly car names, and how their father always cheered the loudest at the races as Jenna spoke. A woman from the back shouted, "We need to keep the spirit alive for our children." Exactly. Frank echoed, his emotions surfacing. It's not just about nostalgia. It's about the future. Our kids will be the ones telling these stories. That sentiment ricocheted through the masses like a shot of espresso. Inspiration hung heavy in the air. People began to stand up, one after another sharing snippets of their history. The different ways the festival had touched their lives, some recalling the first time they fell in love amid the lights and sounds, others sharing tales of friendships forged over spilled soda and crowded bleachers. Amid the powerful narratives, Frank noticed Mr. Thompson standing unusually still, a far-off look painted on his face. Frank stepped towards the older man. "Mr. Thompson, what do you think?" The mechanic's voice wavered slightly. "I remember when I first brought my son to this festival, I stood right where you are, watching him win his first race. I can still see that kid leaping into my arms." Face lit up, his eyes glistened with the mist of yesteryears, and a collective gasp echoed as they all took in those vivid memories. Frank pushed the moment, urgency threading into his voice. "And what if we can start a new tradition? One that honors the past but also looks forward. What about a race to benefit the local schools? A way for us to grow together?" Excited chatter rippled through the crowd. Ideas flowed like the summer breeze that carried the scent of popcorn and cotton candy. Suddenly, the weight of their decision felt lighter, infused with a resilience that could only come from a shared purpose. His heart swelled as he scanned the faces, catching Jenna's eye, her smile bright and encouraging. They were on the brink of something extraordinary, a blend of their cherished memories with the promise of an energized future. But just as the momentum reached a crescendo, the flickering lights above them dimmed for a heartbeat, drawing an unsettling hush. A loud rumble echoed in the distance, slicing through the jubilant atmosphere. Frank's heart sank. Felt as if the ground shifted beneath them. What could that be? And in that moment, he realized they weren't just battling for their festival. They were stepping into an unpredictable storm. Was this a sign of the challenges ahead? "What is that noise?" Jenna whispered, eyes wide, the joy behind temporarily fading. Frank turned his gaze outward, an unsettling feeling crawling up his spine. "I don't know." The crowd stirred restlessly, their excitement morphing into uncertainty. What lay ahead remained shrouded in mystery, and Frank couldn't shake the sense that the real fight was about to unfold. Frank's heart raced as he took in the sudden shift in atmosphere. The rumble grew louder, mixing with the hushed whispers of the crowd. People shifted uneasily, eyes darting toward the source of the sound. It felt like a storm brewing, both in the sky and in the hearts of those gathered. "Everyone, please," Frank called out, raising his hands to calm the gathering storm of emotions. "We're fighting for our community today, and we can't let a little thunder break our spirit." His voice cracked through the murmurs, resonating with a fierce determination that was both inspiring and calming. Slowly, the crowd leaned in, curiosity mingling with their unease. He glanced at the mayor, a reassuring nod exchanged between them, and then back to the crowd, feeling the weight of their anticipation. "Let us keep our momentum. Whatever that sound is, we're here to celebrate." Just then, the rumble intensified, shaking the ground beneath them. It felt as if the universe was challenging them to stand firm. But Frank felt a flicker of inspiration ignite in him. This could be our moment to unite even further. Why not channel this energy? Why not stand together as a show of strength? Together, we are what truly matters. With renewed vigor, he pulled out a makeshift sign, hand-painted with vibrant colors. "Unity against change. Let us show everyone that we can embrace the past while moving toward the future. Let us not only listen to each other but stand together." His voice rang out with a clarity that cut through the noise, rallying them like a battle cry. One by one, people began to pick up their signs, joining Frank in unity. Laughter began to bubble back up, a sign of their resilience pushing through the initial fear. Families and friends gathered, creating a makeshift choir of voices that began to sing a familiar song from their youth, weaving nostalgia with joy. "That's it. Everyone," Frank beamed. "Share your strength. Let the world outside see our pride." And just like that, the community transformed from a hesitating crowd into a tapestry of voices. They sang together, an anthem of their shared history intertwining with hope. Frank watched as Doug and his family joined the chorus, their faces alight with renewed purpose. The noise shifted from an ominous rumble to an echo of celebration, their voices ringing out in defiance of the uncertainty tethering them. The crowd grew louder, hands swaying in rhythm, embodying the very essence of what had defined their festival for generations. It was as if their collective spirit had conjured a protective bubble, a shield against whatever storm brewed beyond. And then Frank noticed a figure stepping forward, a familiar silhouette approaching through the vibrancy of the festival. It was Mr. Thompson, his aged hands raised in a slow clap. "You've got a real gift there, Frank," he remarked, voice heavy with pride. Frank felt tears prick at his eyes. "We're all in this together," he responded, heart swelling. The older man smiled, his own eyes glistening with shared reminiscence. "Then let us remind this town what we're capable of." The crowd erupted into applause, echoing the message that they were more than just a group of individuals fighting for a festival. They were a community united in purpose. They felt the urgency history enveloping them, whispers of the past igniting a vibrant hope for the future. Once more, the roar of the Detroit diesel filled the air, a powerful reminder of their strength. Frank stood tall, the thrill of redemption surging within him. They had transformed this day into something legendary, a celebration not just of engines, but of dreams, laughter, and unity. As the crowd swelled, Frank felt an overwhelming wave of gratitude wash over him. He may have set out to revitalize a mere engine, but instead, he had sparked something far greater, a rebirth of connection and community. In that moment, with voices blending harmoniously around him, Frank knew they would not only fight to keep their history alive, they would carry it boldly into the future, hand in hand, heart to heart. The festival blossomed around them, vibrant and alive, their laughter lingering long after the sun dipped below the horizon. A new chapter had begun, not just for Frank, but for an entire town reclaiming their legacy with pride. And as dusk settled, a promise echoed through the air. Together, we can build something that lasts. Now, if this incredible journey has touched you, then you need to subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and show your support. Comment on your reactions and feelings about this ending. Let us hear your thoughts. And don't wait not even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this transformation. We're building something powerful, and only true fans understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.